Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I am testing some more materials from the Inktober Artsnacks Collection box. I am using the Speedball Waterproof India Ink, the also Speedball nib number 512 and pen holder that they sent, as well as the white Sakura GellyRolls and the Arnhem 100% rag paper. The prompt I picked for this video is Jolt, as in J-O-L-T. My idea for this drawing is to have someone being jolted by a bolt of magic. Like Jolt and Bolt, it kind of stuck in my head, so that's what I went with. So my jolt was caused by a bolt of magic. First thing I did was I did some sketches in graphite on the Arnhem paper. It is not awful if you erase a little bit using a white eraser. These sketches were very quick, so I moved on to my final version very quickly. And unfortunately, due to me being new to this whole filming me making artwork thing, I totally missed most of the lining of this sketch, but there's plenty of shading and painting with ink washes to come. And now for your viewing pleasure, I have the one portion of audio and video that lined up and made any sort of sense from this whole filming process. So basically what I'm doing is I am lining this guy. This elf has been jolted by some magic from this fairy, and he's not happy about it. And what I'm doing right now with these scribbles is I'm using some inspiration from Jake Parker's print he sent us with these sketchy lines around the edges of things before they transition into solid black. So I kind of like that sketchiness, so I'm trying to incorporate it into this like magic whatever this is that's around this guy. Voiceover Christina has a few more ideas about what I was thinking. So I really liked the transition from the light to dark being very sudden, like in Jake Parker's piece, but with some sketchiness around it. However, in my piece, the reason I'm starting so light with this wash is because, well, it's easier to go dark than it is to go light with washes, as well as the fact that I really wasn't sure what I wanted at this point. I wanted the magic to be glowing, like this aura around him, but I didn't know how fast I wanted to transition to the dark. Now the same kind of thing is happening on the figure. I'm using the dip pen to put in a little bit of hatching and cross hatching because I didn't want to jump right into using washes of the darkest darks on the figure. But because this is waterproof, there wasn't any lifting I can do later on to get rid of the ink. So I wanted to do the slightest amounts of shading possible so I could figure out where I wanted everything before I really dove in. And then you'll notice very shortly I also did that on the darkness around the outside before I went in and finally obliterated most of the lights outside of the aura. I went in and I was testing it with the dip pen so I could kind of have like a slow transition. So if it really wasn't something I wanted, I could work around it. Now when I was doing this wash, I was, looking for a paintbrush, and I just found this really super cheap one from like when I was a kid that was super soft and I never found a use for in any other scenario. Now when I was using the Speedball ink directly onto the paper, it was the most useful brush I could have ever imagined because it held so much of the ink. I really, really enjoyed using this. So 10 points to the awful childhood paintbrush. Now as I'm working on this guy, I'm jumping between different parts of it. Like I darkened up the background really quickly, so I'm going back into the main figure and trying to put the darks in. And what I found to be very, very useful was I was able to use a very nice dry brush effect. So if you don't know what a dry brush technique is, it's where your paintbrush only has a tiny bit of paint or ink on it, and you use it to get a kind of scratchy look. And I really liked this because I was able to make his tunic look like there was a woven texture to it. And that was very, very helpful because I didn't want it to just look like a super smooth piece of something, like it's cloth. I wanted it to look like cloth, and I was very pleased that this helped me achieve that. Now at this point, the washes on the main figure needed to dry, so I started inking some of the sketches I did. The first one I didn't like, so I'm not inking that. But the second one, which I'm inking now, was a lot of fun. It was the base idea for the final drawing. In this drawing, I had the fairy and the elf kid about the same size, so it was more of like, oh haha, reasonable that she could be flying off with him. him, but I wanted to emphasize that it was magic that was causing him to respond with a jolt instead of like her just dragging him along. So this was fun. And then I moved on to this next fairy little sketch with a sassier fairy, and she was a ton of fun to draw. I don't have a lot else to say about this. This was just, you know, kind of expressive and fun. Now the last material I was using in this piece was the Sakura GellyRoll pens, and I was very happy with these as well. I was not expecting to like them so much, honestly, because they did not seem super opaque when I was using them over the markers that were set in the box. However, this was fun because I was just working with light and dark, and because they were slightly transparent, I was able to get the magical effect that I wanted. So the aura around this kid coming from the fairy was much easier to achieve because it wasn't fully white. So you kind of felt like it was light. It made it a little different than the rest of the shading. So I went ahead and added that to the scratchiness that I'd already put on the aura of magic, and then I also outlined around the fairy where I had gotten too close with the ink washes, as well as around the elf where it was just too dark. Now my thoughts on these supplies is they're awesome. I love using them in this context. The Arnhem paper is so good at taking the ink wash from the Speedball India Ink. And the holder for the dip pen was so light that I didn't like get a cramp or anything. I haven't been doing a lot with dip pens over a long period of time, so my hands aren't accustomed to them. So sometimes there's a couple of aches and transitions just when anyone tries something new and works at it for a long time. It was super light and wonderful. And this nib holds so much ink. I love it. It's very smooth and applies evenly. I'm able to get really thin and thick lines, so that's amazing. Also, Sakura GellyRolls came out of nowhere and totally surprised me. So for these materials from the Inktober Art Collection box, I am so happy with them. Now, I would really like to know if you guys have ever used these supplies. Please let me know what your thoughts are about dip pens in general, because it's been an area I haven't used in a while, so I'm curious if you have any good tips or pointers. I guess that's the end of my video. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining me. See you next time.